In 1905, a doctor leaned over a freshly severed head. He called the dead man's name out loud. The eyes snapped open, the pupils focused. They found his face. For a few seconds, something behind them may have known. This is what your body actually goes through in its last moments. We have spent 2 centuries trying to kill people gently. Every single time, we told ourselves it was humane. The science says humane might be the biggest assumption in the room. Start with the head that looked back. The city was Orléans, the year 1905. A murderer named Henri Languille faced the guillotine. The blade fell. His head dropped into the basket. A physician, Dr. Bourrieux, was waiting to watch closely. He leaned over the severed head and shouted the name. The eyelids lifted. The eyes rose to meet his. Not a twitch, a slow, deliberate focus. He called again. Again the eyes found his face. Then, both times, the eyelids slid calmly shut. Bourrieux swore he saw living eyes looking at him. It is one of the most famous execution accounts ever recorded. But here's the honest part you must hear. That account is disputed, not settled fact. A widely shared photo tied to it is a known fake. Contemporary newspapers never even mentioned the doctor being there. So treat it as a haunting claim, not proof. You may have heard another guillotine legend too. The chemist Lavoisier, supposedly blinking after his own beheading. Counting out blinks to signal he was still aware. That one is almost certainly a myth. A good story, invented long after his death. So what does the real science actually say? Humans have always feared one thing about dying most. Not the pain itself, being awake for it. So we engineered machines to try to kill faster than fear. Every method is really one desperate bet. Switch the mind off before the pain arrives. The unsettling part is, we may never be sure we win. Let's walk through each of the final rooms. First the blade, the guillotine. It severs the head faster than a nerve can flinch. Blood pressure to the brain collapses almost instantly. The pump that feeds thought is cut off at once. In 2011, scientists studied this in rats. They measured brain waves right after decapitation. Signals tied to awareness fell by half within about 4 seconds. The researchers concluded consciousness likely vanishes within seconds. Within roughly 20 seconds, the brain went essentially flat. So the lean of that study is fairly clear. Awareness in the animals probably ended in seconds, not minutes. But a strange flicker appears near the end. The researchers saw a slow, massive wave of activity. It came roughly a minute after the blade. They nicknamed it the wave of death. It may mark the final mass shutdown of neurons. Is that faint spark actual awareness? The honest answer is we do not know. Unproven, debated, but not fully ruled out. And that uncertainty haunts every method that follows. Next, the rope, the long drop hanging. This one was designed as careful mathematics. The prisoner's weight sets the length of the fall, usually somewhere between 5 and 10 feet. The goal is a precise burst of force, around 1,000 foot-pounds of force on the neck. Done correctly, the upper spine fractures instantly. The neck breaks. The lights go out fast. Death is meant to follow within minutes, near painlessly. That is the version everyone was promised. Now the version nobody wanted to see. If the drop is too short, the neck holds. Then it is no longer a broken neck. It becomes slow strangulation instead. The arteries to the brain are squeezed shut. The windpipe is crushed under the body's weight. This can take 5, 10, even 20 minutes. The same slow failure as most accidental hangings. And if the drop is far too long, force can tear the head off entirely. A gruesome outcome nobody intended. The line between mercy and horror is a few inches. Now step into the third room. The electric chair, thousands of volts. The first jolt is often 2,000 to 2,500. It is meant to erase the mind in an instant, and to throw the heart into a fatal quiver. That quiver is called ventricular fibrillation. The heart shakes uselessly and stops pumping blood. A second jolt then cooks the body from within. The body's temperature can climb toward 138 degrees. The whole bet rests on the timing. Does the mind switch off before the body burns? Even some engineers questioned whether it reliably does. And the record of failures is grim. There were jolts that did not work the first time. Prisoners revived and strapped back in to finish. Reports of heads catching fire and equipment burning out. Each botch shattered the promise of a clean death. The chair was sold as modern and merciful. Even some who built it were unsure it kept its word. Now the fourth room, the firing squad. This method is almost brutally simple. A doctor finds the heart with a stethoscope. He pins a small white target over it. Riflemen sit roughly 25 feet away. On command, they fire at the white cloth. The theory is fast and cold. Destroy the heart, and blood pressure crashes at once. The brainstem starves within seconds. Some experts estimate awareness lost in about 15 seconds. If the aim is true, likely little pain. It may be one of the least uncertain deaths. But Wordif is doing enormous work. The failure mode is missing the heart. In 2025, South Carolina carried out such an execution. An autopsy suggested the shots missed the intended target. Witnesses reported the man groaning after the shots. Around 45 seconds later, he was still making sound. Breathing continued for over a minute before a final gasp. Pathologists concluded he was likely conscious and in pain. The humaneness depended entirely on marksmanship. And marksmanship is not a guarantee. Now the last room, the quietest one. Lethal injection, the needle sold as sleep. Clean, clinical, painless, they said. The classic method uses 3 drugs in order. Drug 1, an anesthetic to render you unconscious. Drug 2, a paralytic that freezes every muscle. Drug 3, potassium chloride to stop the heart. In theory, you sleep through all of it. But look closely at drug 2. The paralytic stops all movement and all breath. It also stops any outward sign of suffering. You could not flinch, cry out, or signal. So what happens if drug 1 fails? Then you may be awake, but completely frozen. Aware, suffocating, unable to move a finger. And then the potassium chloride enters your veins. It is often described as a searing internal burn. You would feel it. You could not show it. Is this common or just a nightmare scenario? The painlessness is strongly contested, not proven. A 2005 analysis in The Lancet raised the alarm. Many executed inmates had anesthetic levels surprisingly low. In some, too low to guarantee they were truly unconscious. Then came a review of over 200 autopsies. Across 9 states and decades of executions. About 84% showed fluid flooding the lungs. The froth in those lungs hinted breathing continued. That condition is called pulmonary edema. The sensation is likened to drowning from inside. The paralytic would hide every sign of it. It is the strongest modern hint that painless may be an illusion. Though critics note it still cannot be proven either way. And that impossibility of knowing is the whole point. Now step back and see the pattern. Every method was born as the kinder replacement. The guillotine, merciful next to the crude axe. The electric chair, modern next to the noose. Needle, clinical next to the chair. Each promised to spare the mind. Each, on closer inspection, hid its own doubt. Look at what humane really seemed to mean each time. It often meant karma for the people watching. It rarely meant proven painless for the condemned. We engineered death to look peaceful in the room. We never quite proved it felt peaceful inside. Think back to that severed head in 1905. The eyes that opened and seemed to focus. We still cannot say what, if anything, they knew. That single uncertainty shadows every method since. We built better machines and cleaner rooms. We got better at making it look gentle. We never got proof that it truly was. So here's the question you cannot shake. In all those quiet, calm, engineered final seconds, were they truly already gone? Or simply unable to tell us they weren't?